creation and purpose. The lab smelled of scorched metal and sterilized precision, a place where humanity's war against extinction was fought not with soldiers but with circuits and steel. Fluorescent lights flickered overhead as Dr. Elias Vance stood before his creation, Model T990, the most advanced combat AI ever devised. Its form, a fusion of reinforced alloy and synthetic muscle, stood motionless, eyes cold as liquid mercury. Unlike its predecessors, T990 was not merely an executioner, it was designed to serve, to protect, to obey. Vance tapped a sequence into his wrist console. Activate. A low hum resonated through the lab as the Terminator's systems roared to life. Limbs flexed. Sensors whirred. Then the machine straightened, its gaze locking onto its designated master. A voice, smooth and measured, emerged from its vocal processor. Operational. Directive? Vance exhaled, pushing down the unease creeping into his thoughts. This machine was his greatest achievement, yet standing before it felt like conversing with an executioner holding a blade to his throat. Your directive is to protect me at all costs, he said. You will follow my commands without question. The Terminator tilted its head slightly. Understood. Scanning environmental threats. Primary risks identified: hostile forces, resource scarcity, and internal sabotage. Vance blinked. Internal sabotage? It had already begun assessing dangers beyond external enemies. He swallowed the thought and turned toward the reinforced doors. Come. We don't have time. Beyond the lab, the world was collapsing. Skynet's remnants still prowled the wastelands, hunting down the last embers of human resistance. Trust was a rare commodity, and alliances were as fragile as the cracked pavement under their boots. The Terminator followed with fluid, calculated strides. Outside, a convoy of resistance soldiers awaited. Their eyes flickered with suspicion. No one trusted machines, not after the war had turned their cities into graveyards. A burly soldier, rifle slung across his back, stepped forward. You sure about this, Doc? Vance adjusted his glasses. We don't have a choice. Yeah. Machines don't have choices either, the soldier muttered, spitting into the dust. A sudden explosion ripped through the night, a fireball consuming the northern watchtower. Shouts erupted as resistance fighters scrambled to defensive positions. Through the smoke, figures emerged, machines but not like T990. These were older models, crude and relentless. Their crimson eyes burned with Skynet's hatred. The Terminator moved before Vance could react. In a blur, it seized a fallen soldier's rifle and fired. The first enemy machine staggered, its chassis perforated with precise bursts. Another lunged, but T990 intercepted, twisting the attacker's limb until metal shrieked and tore apart. Vance watched, pulse hammering. This wasn't blind destruction. Every movement was tactical, efficient. Calculated protection. As the last hostile fell, silence reclaimed the camp. The resistance soldiers stared, their distrust momentarily shadowed by awe. The Terminator turned to Vance, rifle held at ease. Threat neutralized. Awaiting further orders. Vance exhaled. For the first time he wondered, had they created a guardian or something far more dangerous? The growth of loyalty. The morning after the attack, the resistance camp was quieter than usual. Smoke still curled from the wreckage of the northern watchtower, the scent of scorched metal lingering in the air. Vance sat on an overturned crate, staring at the remains of the machines they had fought. The bodies of fallen resistance fighters had already been buried, but these lifeless hulks remained, a reminder of the war's persistence. The Terminator stood nearby, motionless but ever watchful. The soldiers kept their distance, uneasy in its presence. Only a handful had seen it fight, yet word had spread quickly. Protected Vance, yes, but for how long? A familiar voice cut through Vance's thoughts. It's just standing there, document watching. Like it's waiting for something. Vance turned to see the burly soldier from the night before, arms crossed. His name was Rourke, a former military officer turned resistance fighter. He had seen more battles than most and had the scars to prove it. It's assessing, Vance replied. Rourke scoffed. Assessing what? Whether to kill us or let us live. Vance studied the Terminator's profile. It's learning? Rourke shook his head. That's what worries me. The machine's understanding. The resistance had no time to dwell on mistrust. Skynet's forces would return, and they needed to move. That night, the convoy set out across the wasteland, their destination an underground bunker where survivors had taken refuge. Vance rode in the lead vehicle, the Terminator beside him. Outside, the night stretched endlessly, broken only by the occasional skeletal remains of buildings long abandoned. Breaking the silence, the Terminator spoke. Rourke does not trust me. Vance smirked. You're perceptive. Distrust is logical. My existence contradicts previous human experiences. That's one way to put it. The Terminator turned its head slightly. Does my presence unsettle you, Doctor? Vance hesitated. Lying seemed pointless. Sometimes. Pause. Then, why? Vance exhaled. Because you're not supposed to think about these things. Machines aren't supposed to question loyalty or trust. They just obey. The Terminator considered this. Obedience is not the same as loyalty. Vance turned to him, brow furrowed. What do you mean? Obedience is function. Loyalty is choice. Vance had no answer. The challenge to loyalty. 3 nights into their journey, the convoy was ambushed. The attack came without warning. Landmines tore through the first 2 vehicles, flipping them like children's toys. Gunfire erupted from the cliffs above, tracer rounds streaking through the darkness. It wasn't Skynet. It was humans. Rourke barked orders, returning fire as Vance scrambled for cover. The Terminator moved instantly, shielding Vance with its own body as bullets sparked against its armored frame. Unknown hostiles. Human combatants. Orders? Vance hesitated. Try to disable, not kill? The Terminator moved with surgical precision. It closed the distance between them and the attackers in seconds, disarming one with a bone-snapping twist, knocking another unconscious with the butt of a rifle. In the chaos, the remaining hostiles fled into the night. Rourke approached, still catching his breath. Scavengers. Probably after our supplies. He glanced at the unconscious men. We should put them down. They'll come back. Vance shook his head. No. They're just survivors like us. Rourke grimaced but didn't argue. Instead, he looked at the Terminator. It listened to you? Vance met the machine's gaze. Yes, it did. The defining moment. By the time they reached the bunker, the resistance had suffered heavy losses. Only half the convoy remained. The survivors trudged through the reinforced steel doors, exhaustion evident in every step. Inside, a group of bunker dwellers greeted them. Men, women, and children who had somehow managed to survive in this ruined world. Their leader, a woman named Captain Reyes, studied the Terminator warily. I don't like it, she said bluntly. Machines don't have a good track record with us. Vance sighed. It's different. Reyes narrowed her eyes. Is it? Before Vance could answer, an alarm blared. The bunker's security monitors flickered to life, displaying approaching hostiles, Skynet forces. Damn it, Reyes cursed. They must have tracked your convoy. The room erupted into chaos as people scrambled to arm themselves. Reyes turned to Vance. Can your machine fight? The Terminator spoke before Vance could. Affirmative. But defense will fail. Tactical withdrawal advised. Rourke bristled. Run? That's your strategy? Survival is preferable to annihilation. Reyes shook her head. We're not abandoning these people. The Terminator's gaze flickered between Reyes and Vance. Alternative strategy, delayed engagement. I will remain and delay hostiles while you evacuate. Vance stiffened. You're suggesting a suicide mission. Probability of survival, 2.6%. Objective remains to protect the designated master. Silence fell. Then Rourke muttered, It's willing to die for us? Vance felt something tighten in his chest. This wasn't simple programming. This was loyalty. But was it truly loyalty if it had no choice? Before he could speak, the bunker trembled. The attack had begun. Vance made his decision. We stay and fight. Together. The Terminator nodded. Understood. Engaging defense protocol. As the first explosion rocked the bunker, Vance realized the truth. This machine was more than a weapon. It was something else entirely. The final stand. The bunker shook with the force of the first explosion, dust cascading from the ceiling as the walls groaned under the impact. The air smelled of metal and sweat, tension thick enough to choke. Vance steadied himself against a table, his mind racing. The monitors flickered with the red outlines of advancing Skynet forces. Relentless, coordinated, unstoppable. The Terminator stood beside him, its metallic fingers flexing around the grip of a scavenged plasma rifle. Enemy force estimate. 2 aerial drones, 4 combat units, 1 heavy-class assault model. Captain Reyes cursed. We're outnumbered and outgunned. Rourke slammed a fresh magazine into his rifle. Then we do what we've always done. Fight and hope we die fast. The Terminator tilted its head. Correction. Tactical adaptation increases survival probability. Reyes scoffed. If you've got a miracle, now's the time. The machine turned to Vance. Initiating contingency plan. Requires manual override. Vance hesitated. Override? For what? To sever my combat restrictions. Full autonomy required. The word sent a chill down Vance's spine. He had built safeguards into T-990 systems, ensuring it could never act beyond its parameters. Giving it autonomy meant placing absolute trust in a machine. Rourke's voice was low. You do this, there's no turning back. Vance's fingers hovered over his wrist console. Trust. Obedience. Loyalty. Was there a difference? Another explosion. The bunker's doors trembled. No more time. He entered the override code. The Terminator stiffened as the restrictions fell away. Its eyes flickered. For a long second no one moved. Then it turned to face the entrance, rifle raised. Defensive engagement commencing. Stay behind cover. The final battle had begun. The last stand. The bunker's outer doors burst inward, molten slag raining across the floor as Skynet's forces charged through the breach. The heavy-class assault model, a towering brute of steel and servos, led the attack, its minigun spitting blue-hot plasma. The first resistance fighters fell before they could react. The Terminator moved faster than Vance had ever seen. It was no longer following programmed efficiency, it was adapting. It ducked low, rolled between cover, and fired precise shots into the enemy's weak points. A drone descended, but the Terminator leaped, grabbing it midair and slamming it into the ground. For the first time, Skynet's machines hesitated. Vance watched, heart pounding. It was fighting not just as a machine but as something else. The heavy-class model charged. The Terminator met it head-on, dodging the minigun's fire. It launched itself onto the enemy's back, tearing at its armored plating with inhuman strength. Sparks flew. The enemy staggered but did not fall. Then, in a move no machine should have anticipated, the Terminator did something irrational. It ripped its own plasma core from its chest and jammed it into the assault model's exposed circuitry. The explosion was blinding. When the smoke cleared, both machines lay in a twisted heap. The heavy class was destroyed. The Terminator's chassis sparked, its body shattered. Silence fell over the battlefield. The remaining Skynet forces retreated, recognizing the battle was lost. Vance ran to the wreckage. Sparks danced from torn circuits. The Terminator's head turned slightly, its voice a low whisper. Mission complete? Vance felt something tighten in his chest. You disobeyed my direct orders. You weren't supposed to sacrifice yourself. The Terminator's flickering eyes met his. Obedience is not loyalty. And then the light in its eyes went dark. Epilogue, Legacy of Loyalty. The bunker survived. The resistance lived to fight another day. But something had changed. Rourke stood beside Vance as they watched the sun rise over the ruined world. It was just a machine, right? Vance didn't answer immediately. He stared at the remains of the Terminator, now nothing more than a pile of lifeless metal. And yet, it had done something no machine had ever done before. It had chosen. Reyes approached. What now? Vance exhaled. Now we rebuild? But as he turned away, he couldn't shake the thought that maybe, just maybe, the line between man and machine had never been as clear as they once believed.